Hello, everyone. I am Anna Jane Perrell, and you are watching the FeeCast. As always, we have our lovely panel of Dan Sanchez. We also invited Tyler Brandt to our panel today as well.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. We're very excited. You guys are basically like the Garfunkel and Oates of the content team.
Oh yeah, we're a good dynamic duo. Happy I'm here though.
Garfunkel and Oates?
Yeah, a great combo. You guys have that energy. Yeah.
I see what you did there.
Yeah. All right. So we do not have this week. We have Richard Lawrence is out, who is our normal host, who I am taking over for. And we do not have Marianne March. But I'm excited to hear what you guys have going on in the office. So what's happening?
Well, on the website, we just published an article about a recent development, something that we talked about last week, but it has progressed because last week we talked about the Stop Bezos Act of Bernie Sanders, and now, seemingly in response to that, Jeff Bezos has announced that Amazon's minimum wage, its internal minimum wage, will be risen to $15 an hour.
Yeah, part 2, Jeff Bezos strikes back.
Yep.
Oh, wow. Oh, my goodness. So what do you guys think? I mean, do you think this is a good decision for Amazon? Do you think this was the right business decision? What do you think's going on here?
I hope it's a good decision because, I need my stuff. I need my Amazon stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, and so do a lot of people. And
Yeah, we want that business to thrive for sure. I know
Right.
I benefit from Amazon. I literally yesterday heard a book I wanted to read, and I know I'm getting it in my hands tonight, I believe. Yeah, I mean, Amazon's incredible.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing. There's just so much good stuff on Amazon where it's even cheaper than a place like Walmart. Like I was looking at batteries the other day, and it looks like you could get 100 AA batteries on Amazon for $24. And
Yeah.
usually in
Wow.
a regular store, it's like $8 for 4 batteries. I mean, that's just incredible.
Yeah.
Right, and just like with Walmart, it's people who really, it makes a difference how just that small difference in terms of paying just like $1 more or less for a battery with your household expenses especially for families who aren't rich. That makes a big difference for them.
Yeah, I think you're right. You're talking about on the margin decision making, which is how most humans make their decisions. I think also something else is that when you look at maybe Amazon doesn't have the price advantage, but they do have other services like their 2-day shipping and things like that, where they're really providing you a service that other places can't. So like I know that my hair product, it costs the same wherever I go, but I can get it in 2 days or I can get it in 10 days, right, online. So that's something else that I think Amazon is really great about.
And for me, I'm a big reader, and I have a Kindle, and I read Kindle books on my Kindle and on my iPad, on my computer. But also I listen to Audible audiobooks, which is also owned by Amazon. And they have this amazing technology called WhisperSync, where you can leave off with reading on your Kindle and then get in your car and start listening to an audiobook. And the audiobook will pick up where you left off on the Kindle. It's amazing.
Wait, that's
pretty
pretty
cool.
crazy.
Yeah,
Because I'm still a hipster. I buy physical books off of Amazon.
Yeah, and you got all your
right.
papers over here.
Yeah,
as
I
opposed to
don't even
Dan's
have an iPad or a laptop or anything.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that Gen Xers seem to be like more tech savvy than millennials, I think. Or
Oh,
maybe
I actually-
not savvy, but
I feel like we talked about this on a previous episode. I have never used a Kindle, never will. I'm only like a hardcover person or like whatever. I use physical copy books, and I don't know if it's like a generational gap thing where y'all use Kindles. I do not.
I love Kindles.
I think it's something about growing up in the age where everything is digitized and online and floating in the ether, and it comes to a point where you just want something physical to hold on to, something real.
Oh, that's very beautiful.
Yeah,
That's a
thank
beautiful
you.
thought, Tyler.
That's why I'm here.
Yeah.
Now, there's nothing wrong, obviously, with paying workers more, especially if that's like the amount that they contribute to the operation.
No, I mean, I think that's awesome. That's how you get good employees, right? I mean, that's the
Right.
idea is you want to be competitive in the market of employees. So in theory, this is a good idea so they can get the best employees they can.
In theory, but again, it didn't happen just in a vacuum. Like it did happen after there was huge political pressure, not just from Bernie Sanders, but Trump himself has been like attacking Amazon a lot, and just especially it seems that recently he
What was Trump attacking Amazon for? Because I know that I think that we've kind of heard the Bernie Sanders side with the Bezos Act and all of that. But what I guess what are you talking about with?
Well, with Trump, that he doesn't like that they're driving brick and mortar businesses out of business.
Okay. So it's kind of like a loss of American jobs kind of thing.
Yes, right, exactly.
Okay.
And Amazon also has factory locations in China that are largely automized, right?
Right. So part of it is his protectionist animosity towards China and towards outsourcing in general.
Okay.
Yeah. Also, he doesn't like that Bezos owns the Washington Post, or
Oh,
it's like
fake
right,
news.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, and he thinks the Washington Post is really critical of his administration unfairly.
Interesting. So you're saying so that this isn't happening in a vacuum. You think this isn't really just a solid business decision. There's some influences that we're seeing.
Yeah, I mean, it seems that recently some headlines have really gotten Amazon in the spotlight. So I think the net worth of Amazon itself reached $1 trillion recently, which is amazing. And also that Bezos is now like one of the wealthiest people.
Did he
in the
surpass
world.
Warren Buffett? Like he's the most wealthy guy now?
Right.
Like, okay.
I
in
think
the
so.
world?
I think so.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so
Exciting.
these headlines have kind of like put a target on their back of, especially from class warriors, that people like Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, they'll criticize them for not paying their workers enough, for disparities, for the fact that Jeff Bezos himself makes so much and the average worker makes so little.
But that raises a good question, though. If Amazon is one of the wealthiest companies in the world, why shouldn't they be paying their employers more?
Yeah, I mean, it matters. So even if you are the wealthiest company in the world, you can't afford to pay workers more than they put into it. Because even the biggest company in the world, if you run at a loss for long enough, you won't be the biggest company in the world for long. Like big companies are still vulnerable to basic arithmetic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're saying that this is the price that they are paying for their workers is what makes their company profitable, and so that's kind of where they found the sweet spot of that payment level.
Right. So let's say that even like someone who's sweeping the floors at an Amazon warehouse, sweeping the floors is important, and it contributes to the bottom line a certain amount. So if you don't sweep the floors, they get all slippery and it obstructs traffic in the warehouse, and so they're able to ship and sell fewer products otherwise, and so you can imagine that, okay, one of these warehouse workers, by facilitating that movement, that they contribute, let's say, $14 for every hour that they work to the bottom line.
So that's their value? It's $14 an hour?
Yeah, that's their marginal productivity,
Okay.
It's called in economics. But so you can't, if you pay them more than they contribute, if you pay them more than $14, then you're losing money for every hour that they're working.
So it actually benefits you to just not even have them in the mix.
Right.
Pretty much.
Yeah. If there's a minimum wage above their marginal productivity.
Interesting. Well, I mean, so obviously I think Amazon benefits my life. It's much easier to get my hair products or my books or what have you. I mean, so do you think that they're ultimately contributing to on the whole good or on the whole bad in this? Capitalism is something that we do vilify to a degree, I think, in these conversations where we talk about extremely wealthy people running, extremely profitable companies.
Yeah, that's a good question, because at what point does Jeff Bezos grow his company, Amazon, from small to big? And at what level does Amazon become an evil company? Is it because it's just the value that they contribute towards society, that they're giving everybody all these goods for cheap, that they become bad because they have such a large market share? Or I wonder what people's definition of that. When does a company become evil?
Yeah.
Well, I think the word monopoly is definitely thrown around in that context a lot. So is that is that what we're talking about when you talk about when they have X amount of the market share? Is that bad, and should we stop that? And is that a problem?
Yeah, especially if Amazon is much more proficient and efficient at getting you products in 2 days than Jim's Corner Store. Is it bad that Amazon has 60% of the market and Jim's Corner Store has, say, 40? Just because Amazon is more good at what they do?
Yeah.
Yeah, because when you think about bigness, as long as it's bigness based on voluntary exchanges, that means more voluntary exchanges. And with each voluntary exchange, it benefits both parties. And so by growing big, by providing me with an amazing learning experience with Kindle and Audible, working in sync, and you with makeup products that you mentioned, and what did you buy? Like
Books and batteries.
Moleskines or
1,000 batteries, bulk batteries.
Hey, you never know when you're going to need them.
Yeah.
It's always good to
A
have
lot
them
of
around.
remotes.
that they're benefiting us and millions and millions of people like us. So I don't see how that can scale to evil. That to the amount that scales, it's just more good, it seems to me.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I feel like people in that argument, people think, it's okay, so they basically continue to rely on voluntary exchange until they have taken over everybody. They are the preferred provider of most goods and services, and then we no longer have Jim's Corner Store, and then Amazon is, or whatever company that we're talking about, is positioned to raise their prices because they know that customers can't do anything about it. That's the argument that I hear.
Right. So in monopoly antitrust economics, they talk about predatory pricing, where you're able to cut your price so low that you drive out all the other competition, and then you become a monopoly, and then you can raise the price to whatever you want. Mm-hmm. But I would just look at the facts now. Obviously, they're not there now because they're not raising prices. That they still are cutting prices. That Amazon does make things cheaper, and so even though there's only one company that's exactly like Amazon, they're still competing against brick and mortar places and other online retailers. But there's always sort of potential competition too, that maybe there isn't competition from companies that currently exist, but there's always capital that could be coalesced into a new competitor if they started raising prices.
Yeah. Okay, so you're saying, so that basically, like, as long as the market is open,
Yes.
in theory, if a bad company raises prices, somebody will come in and say, never mind, I can give this to you for a little bit cheaper.
Exactly.
Okay, I see. So competition is always going to, in theory, encourage that price, avoidance of price,
Yes.
I guess, price exploitation? I don't know.
Yeah, although you raise a really good issue, because that is if there aren't barriers to entry.
Yeah.
But even Amazon is erecting barriers to entry, or would like to raise
With the
barriers
minimum wage
to
thing that
entry.
you're
Yeah.
talking about?
Yeah,
Yeah.
because
What do you mean by that? Elaborate.
it not only announced that. Oh, were you going to say?
I was just going to say, because I know on our last FeeCast episode, we talked about the $15 minimum wage being detrimental towards Amazon and them being able to hire less people. So how can Amazon turn around and then say, hey, we're just going to do it anyways? Like, is it going to be beneficial towards the business, the fact that they can institute a $15 minimum wage?
That's a good question.
I think when you talk about benefit, at least to me, there's incredible optics on this, right? You've got, oh my gosh, like, Amazon, good for you, buddy.
Yes.
Like, yes, you're helping
That's
the
the
little
PR image
people.
for sure.
Right.
Yeah, and the $15 minimum wage serves them in that way, certainly as a company. I mean, it's a smart marketing strategy. But I think that there's another component to this that we need to address. The minimum wage. It's certainly no surprise to anyone out there listening that libertarians do not care, or do not care for the minimum wage. But let's talk a little bit very briefly about why that is, and why that might look bad. I mean, why that might be bad for a company and for the economy in general.
Sure. Well, like I mentioned before, every worker contributes a certain amount to the bottom line, and that's their marginal productivity. And if you're forced to pay them more than that amount, then you're going to lose money for every hour that they work, and so you're going to lay them off. You're not going to hire them in the first place. So the minimum wage basically outlaws jobs. It basically creates unemployment.
Yeah.
And so to the extent that it's voluntary, a voluntary increase in the wage rate, that generally doesn't happen. But again, you have to wonder, how voluntary is it when you've got Bernie Sanders and breathing down their neck.
Well, my question is also with this minimum wage, and I think Tyler kind of said this too, is as a business decision, if they were previously saying in response to the Bezos Act by Bernie Sanders, they were previously saying that this was not a good idea. We didn't, from a business standpoint, this wasn't really sustainable. And now they're saying, okay, this is a private decision, we're going to make minimum wage a thing here at our company, assuming they're already functioning at a profit maximizing level. how's this going to affect their employees? I mean, does this mean they're going to lose employees because they're raising the wages of everyone there?
It could be, especially because Amazon is capable of automating some of the work that entry-level employees do.
Okay, so you're saying really this is kind of the underlying thing is that they're just going to use this to move toward automation rather than continue to hire people,
Exactly.
or focus on innovation of technology
Right.
as a way to cut costs
Right.
after raising the price.
I
Okay.
think so. But the thing is that Amazon can afford to automate, but not every
Jim's
competitor.
Corner Store.
Right, not
Jim's Corner Store. Yeah.
Exactly. And so it's one thing to have an internal policy of a minimum wage, but Jeff Bezos also announced that he is going to support the federal minimum wage going up.
Yeah, so this is kind of the
Sneaky.
interesting part of this. Yeah, I was like, I heard it at first when you brought up this article to me earlier today, and I was like, oh, that's awesome. He's going to do, as a private business owner, he's going to make this decision to raise the wage. That's awesome.
But-
This is how you get good employees. And then it's like, and he's also going to support federal intervention. Like, great,
Yeah.
wonderful. So what is that? What exactly is he trying to do kind of as the second component of this?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. And it just seems to me like they have been so pressured by Bernie Sanders and the rest of the people that either way, whatever decision they were going to make, there was going to be some cost imposed on them. So it's either comply with the Bezos Act and then end up paying a certain percentage based on all of your workers that are on food stamps and welfare and stuff like that. Or what Amazon did do is that they jumped on top of this issue and they said, we're going to look like we're good and support a minimum wage and get praised by Bernie Sanders and the Washington Post and everyone. But what we're going to do is make lobbying efforts for a federal minimum wage so that the competition decreases and then they can corner more of the market. And that's at least what it seems like to me.
Yeah, because their competitors, again, they can't afford to automate these jobs. So if there's a minimum wage that's imposed on them, where it forces them to lay off people because they can't afford to pay entry-level workers that much, then they can't afford to pay people to sweep the warehouse floor, and they can't afford robots to sweep the warehouse floor. So they can't sweep the warehouse floor, and they go out of business. And Amazon has fewer competitors. And that is a barrier to entry. And
Yeah.
that really is a way that they can act as a monopoly and raise prices willy-nilly because they have effectively banned the competition.
So it's interesting. Like socially, they're just being like, look, we're playing the game, we're doing the right thing, and we also encourage you. We encourage the federal government to support this initiative as well as a way really to benefit them at their company.
That's
Yeah.
right.
That's just crazy.
Yeah, it's kind of cynical when you think
Yeah.
about it, and it's just so frustrating because I'm not trying to like vilify Bezos because plenty of people are doing that already.
He's done a lot of
Yeah.
good.
And he's a hero. He's an absolute hero. I think he's a benefactor of humanity because
Absolutely.
all the utility that he's provided to millions of people just like us, and lots of people who are maybe struggling less than us, where the difference in price of a battery really does matter. And so it's just so frustrating that the perverse incentives that our political system creates makes even someone who does something so heroic, it kind of muddies his motives and makes him do things that is not really a fair way of competing.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting perspective. No, I think Bezos is, at its very core, Amazon started as a way to access books, right? A little bit more affordably. And if you think about just that, what that's done for, like you said, humanity is pretty crazy. And then you take someone who has changed people's lives, like access to knowledge, access to books, which is so critical to human existence, and is now kind of doing something very business cynical. Do you think that's actually what's going on, or do you think that this is purely optics? Do you think that this is something that's actually going to be enacted? Do you think, I guess my question is this more of a PR marketing stunt, or is this genuinely something that Amazon may take action on to benefit their business?
That's a
what do
good
you
question, and I don't want to infer people's motives
Right,
because, even in the field of stuff like game theory, like people learn that it's literally impossible to understand the intentions of another person,
Right.
so you can't really assume it. But that being said, Jeff Bezos was faced with a hard decision. All the pressure he's had on him from the media and Bernie Sanders and people like that, he had to make some sort of move. So maybe in Amazon's view, in Bezos' view, this was the best possible move they could make, and they don't necessarily want to put their competitors out of business. But being faced with extra taxes for workers that have food stamps, they're going to have to assume some sort of cost. And for them, this is a way to assume a cost while still growing their business.
Yeah, when you put yourself in his shoes and he's being persecuted, it might be sort of the mentality of, if I'm going down, the competition is going down with me, where it's like you see the writing on the wall that, like, okay, people really have it out for me and my company. So if I'm going to be basically coerced into raising my wages, I want everyone to be coerced too.
It's interesting because to me, it kind of sounds like a tool by which they achieve this, I mean, is the federal government enacting this policy, right? Or pressuring companies to have a minimum wage. I mean, it almost seems like without their involvement, this wouldn't be an outcome, or
Yeah.
this wouldn't be a choice made by Amazon.
Yeah, and there's something Jeff Bezos actually said about that too, is he said, regarding all the political pressure, we listened to our critics, thought hard about what we wanted to do, and decided we want to lead. So that just goes to show you that they didn't want to be stuck in this political gray area with all the pressure on them. They wanted to make a move so they could be out ahead. And they are. I mean, look at Bernie singing the praise to him and everybody else. I mean, it makes them look really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it really transforms them from market entrepreneurs into political entrepreneurs, and moves them from a realm in which superior service is how you get ahead, where like access to power and access to legislative power is how you get ahead.
That's a really good point. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I often find that if you take an issue that relates to, which I mean is such, to me, so I guess controversial, is capitalism good or bad, which is something that we're always tossing around. If you take some of the bigger issues surrounding capitalism, like monopoly, for example, and you unravel that, you actually see that it is the authority or the power that's lended to a company or an industry that's government sanctioned, right? And so I think that that's something that's always important to consider when you talk about how companies act in the world, is that they aren't acting in a vacuum. They're actually acting with incentives that are based on government intervention.
Yes.
So yeah.
There's a term called regulatory capture that talks about how whenever there's a regulation of an industry, that the big players in that industry inevitably gain control over the shape of that regulation in order to crush competition. And so a lot of people think that they are really sticking it to the big business, but actually they're just handing them power.
That's what's so sad about it, is like the whole leftist mentality towards hostility against business, and we want to pay people a fair wage. But what they're doing is just giving a huge corporation even more power with the government, which is ultimately going to hurt them even more than no policy would. And it's like, you just have to understand that there are always unseen consequences towards the policies you propose.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. So what do you guys think in terms of, I guess, what are these solutions that maybe are not, or what would you see Amazon doing to address these concerns that are kind of their social concerns, their critics and things like that? What would be a move if the federal government enacting a minimum wage was not an option? Do you think they would still create a minimum wage professionally, or do you think, I mean, for their employees, or what do you think would be a good solution for Amazon as a business?
I don't know. I mean, I guess I would just stick to your convictions and stick to, like, not be ashamed of what you're doing, that your role in society as an entrepreneur and as a business, and just try to educate society about the function that wages have, that it's not, they're not welfare payments. Like, they're really important. They're signals in a market economy that makes things efficient and makes things more productive, and that wages should be just set by the market, and that. Yeah, just treating it as a welfare, as a favor to these people, I think it's actually an insult, if anything.
Yeah, and it's kind of that as opposed to, I think, our founder's vision, Leonard Reed. I've been reading the biography of him by Mary Senholz recently, which is a good just overview of his life. But one of the things he did is he was
in paperback, I assume.
in paper.
Yeah.
No, actually, it's an ebook.
Okay.
Because I don't have
Going
access
digital.
to the paperback version.
Oh, okay.
But one of his whole things is that he worked in the Los Angeles Chamber of Commerce for a while, and he was surrounded by a bunch of business people who did nothing but lobby the government for more power because business is good. But eventually down the line, he realized that excessive business entanglement with government doesn't really help society flourish as much as it could. So his whole thing was to educate society on how we can better give economic education towards the people so they can understand these decisions. And like what you should really be doing is, if you're Jeff Bezos, don't cave into the political pressure. Don't apologize to the mob. You have to stand firm in your principles of sound economics. And that's what I wish I could have seen.
Yeah, because I mean, I think that a company that Bezos recently bought, Whole Foods, that the founder of Whole Foods is a good example of
John
that.
Mackey, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
that John Mackey, that he actually tries to educate the public about free market economics.
Yeah.
Really?
He speaks at like SFL conferences and stuff like that.
Students for Liberty.
Yes,
Is that- yeah.
Students for Liberty.
Students for Liberty. Interesting. I had no idea. I mean, I know that some people do. I mean, at least just anecdotally, I know that my friends and people in my life were like, oh, yeah, isn't that such a bummer? Whole Foods is now going to be a part of Amazon. And I was like, I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's a good business model. And they're serving their customer what they want, which is organic rice at $1,000 a pound.
Yeah.
And people want that.
Yeah, if
so
I can
why
get
would,
my kombucha delivered with a drone, why
Oh,
wouldn't I want that?
Yes, if only. That's the day. Well, I mean, it sounds like some of the things that we need to, I guess, focus more on are thinking about how we can inform the public,
Right.
how we can encourage the public to pursue information and knowledge rather than kind of value signaling without education. And it sounds like prices also matter. That's really, I mean, that's always the fundamental point I think that we see, especially when you talk about free markets, is that price is the only way. If we are all uniquely complicated individuals with our own values all across the world, and price is the only way we can communicate, which is what I believe, then
Yes.
price matters, and I guess the integrity of price matters. And so minimum wage distracts from that or clouds that, and it's harder to communicate what the value of something is.
Yes, exactly. The market is such an intricately complicated system, and this level of cooperation, like, it could only happen with some kind of a signal that could be propagated without any kind of like overt central command, and that can be really understood at a basic level. And that's what prices are. And the more that you mess with prices, the more you obscure those signals and make the market less coordinated, and it impoverishes everybody.
Or incentivizes companies to make almost the cynical decisions, right? It's like if we can't use price as a way to value things, well, okay, sure, let's use government authority to protect ourselves or protect our interests. So I think that we've identified three kind of main points. We're talking about access to education is important. Access to, at least talking about ideas and trying to make sure that the public
That's
is
why we're here.
educated. Yeah, absolutely. That's why you guys do what you do on the website. It is about encouraging people to pursue this information rather than just make decisions or make decisions based on value without education. And then we've also got price matters. So making sure that prices have integrity and the way that we communicate prices has integrity. And then I think also it's just, let's make sure that the government isn't a tool by which companies, I guess, make selfish decisions, right?
Those are great bullet points.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Yeah.
I feel like that's
It's a good summation.
that's about it. Yeah. So, any other parting thoughts on the Amazon Bezos minimum wage?
Just
No?
Jeff Bezos, recognize what you're doing as heroic, and don't
And everyone
apologize
else.
for it.
And
Yeah.
everyone else.
Yeah.
Let's really think about the importance of business innovation to our lives.
Yeah, I think wherever you are as a person, it's just really important to stand like a bedrock on your principles instead of caving into pressure from the mob, no
Yes.
matter what industry you're in. I think
Right.
that's a good takeaway,
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a great point, because it'll never be enough for them.
right?
They'll always be coming back for more.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's about all the time we have for today. I hope you guys continue to Amazon Prime. Enjoy your week. Thank you so much.